Well, trading has closed on August the 10th, 2023, and we always start with our disclaimer, go over our calls, make some predictions. It's my trading plan for tomorrow, the 11th of August, 2023. Please remember, trade at your own risk. Just because I say something doesn't make it right. Well, we looked for higher prices today. We certainly closed higher, unchanged really, but higher. We traded much higher. That's all we have to do. So the call worked, but it certainly, I didn't predict the degree of correction we had after the rally. Just that we have the rally. Here's what we said. This was the pattern with the early low. Typically, it's a rally day with a high and a final hour. That didn't happen. Counts as tomorrow's open. If we take this high out early, it's the normal pattern. Otherwise, it's weak. And there should be lower lows coming, even if they don't come immediately. Tomorrow should have the early low pattern too. Early on, in the middle of the afternoon, MEJT targeted lower prices, which we got, but they had an optional higher target likely to print, and we got that too. So that's played out. Few things we should notice here. We dropped all day, but couldn't hold on to the midday low. Couldn't hold on to this low, or this low. So we so far haven't made any progress on the downside. We also have a wall with gap. These things typically fill, although not typically as quickly as this, and there's support under the origin of the wall. So this is support. Doesn't have to hold, but it's had support. You're also at the lower Bollinger Band. That doesn't have to hold either, but it is support. That's the daily chart. This morning's rally stopped right at this trend line we've been showing. I think that eventually is going to happen is we're going to play ping pong between the lines on this Andrews pitchfork, and the lower end of the pitchfork is in the lower 4400s, and I think that's a reasonable candidate for a low before we start a big move up, but that doesn't mean we go there tomorrow. You can always make the waves say whatever you want when they're consolidating like this. You can count this as A and that as B. And C is equal to A right at the low. And within B, you have an ABC with C equals A. And within C, there's an ABC with C equals A. So as far as the wave count goes, there is a wave count which can justify a low here. Doesn't mean it's the only valid count. It doesn't mean it's the right count. If there weren't a count, I'd say you weren't done dropping. But when there is a count, at least you have to consider the possibility. Well, this is futures, and you got this huge volume spike. Usually it's higher when there's a real low, but on a relative basis, it shows much higher than all its neighbors. Doesn't mean tomorrow's won't be higher. You don't know that until tomorrow's close. But typically these spikes tend to represent capitulation by amateur traders. This is the E-mini contract. And these spikes tend to occur near market lows. Doesn't have to be exact, but often it is. So we have a wave count which justifies a low here. We have a spike which justifies a low here. We have failure to take out these lows, which justifies a low here. I'm not really anxious to take the long side here based on this close. I think when you challenge this so many times, even if it holds now, eventually it's going to break. But tomorrow's open could change all that. The PPI report comes out tomorrow. If we have a big gap up tomorrow, like the one we had today, and we take this out early, if that happens, I mean, you've got the makings of a short-term low, even though I think we're going to break this eventually and go into the low 4400s. So I don't know how we'll open tomorrow. When these reports come out, anything can happen. But this is a negative pattern as we stand, because it's usually positive, and lower lows should come. But if we take this out early and a good response to the report, the whole picture changes, and that we're not going to know until tomorrow. Mixed signals rules. Tomorrow's pattern has really low, doesn't mean you won't gap up. PPI report comes out before tomorrow's open. Can be a market mover and can invalidate any analysis I make tonight. Signals are mixed. It's bullish to decline, but it's unable to affect the close under prior lows. And if that's maintained at the open, it should lead to higher prices, even if we don't close higher. There's wave balance at the close and a volume spike in futures. It's all bullish stuff. But it's bearish that today's normally bullish pattern wasn't. And if that's maintained at the open, we should trade lower even if we don't close lower. What the bulls need tomorrow is a sharp gap higher, ideally overtaking today's high early. Because of the PPI report, I can't rule that out. Recent lows were retested so many times that eventually I think they'll fall. And I think the low 4400s cash is one of the reasonable downside targets. But the lower target doesn't prevent rallying first. And in spite of this negative action, moving sharply higher tomorrow could delay the inevitable break lower. And that's today's call. Just remember not to get, not to invest too much money when the market's chopping around like this. I think the real money's made when there's a strong trend, which this certainly is not. And that is today's call.